Monday, August 6, 1945. It's 8:15 in the morning and most people in the city of Hiroshima are heading to work. The people in Hiroshima were kind of more happy than other people in Japan because their city was not hit during the war, and that's in a way where most of the cities in Japan were hit very heavily throughout the war. You have to note that at this time World War II has pretty much ended and Berlin has surrendered, but the Japanese won't surrender, and that is why every day the Japanese cities would be getting bombed. Not a normal bombing either, fire bombs, which is considered a war crime now. But even with all that, Hiroshima is safe and everybody is doing their job. Just like we said, it is 8:15 in the morning and it's a beautiful sunny summer day. After 1 minute, when the clock turns to 8:16 in the morning, the sun that was in the sky turns into two suns. Because when they dropped the nuclear bomb, they don't let it hit the ground. They detonated at a height of 600 meters, and when you exploded all the way up there, the blast radius is much greater and the energy doesn't go inside the ground. Most of the population of this city died in 1 second, but the ones that were farther and saw this takes place in front of their eyes have this to say about it. The ground is continuously shaking, you hear glass breaking everywhere, and the weather is extremely hot all of a sudden. There was broken glass being blasted everywhere, and a lot of people that stayed alive were killed because of shards of glass inside them. A lot of people that were heavily injured are still alive and suffering. Breathing is extremely difficult because the amount of dust and ash and fire in the air is so high. They try to put their shirt in front of their mouth so they can breathe a little easier. At this time, if you are standing, you really can't breathe because the density of the smoke and ash is much higher, but when you go lower towards the ground, you can actually try to breathe at that point, and that is why a lot of people were crawling as they breathe. The ground is extremely hot and it's burning your knees and hands, but that's much better than suffocating to death. The people that survived the blast only want to find a place where they can breathe, but finding a place is very difficult. The ones that were over a mile and a half away from the blast were doing much better. They could breathe and the blast radius didn't hit them that hard. And mostly glass broke. So what happened to the people that were about 1.5 miles away? The ones that were standing in front of the window died instantly, because back in the day the glass wasn't as advanced as today, and when it exploded it basically turns into a bunch of knives and everyone that was in front of it would get sliced open. But the ones that weren't next to the windows heard a humongous blast, and after a few seconds we saw a giant mushroom cloud made of fire and ash. 90% of Hiroshima was made up of wood, and that is why they were all flattened out by this bomb. The only buildings that were still standing were all the buildings that were made with brick and cement, and they were properly put together. And it's good to know that some of these buildings are still around today. The ones that were built with brick but they weren't properly put together were also blasted like the wooden buildings. The only people that were close to this blast but still survived were the ones that were in these old structures that were made from brick, and they could withstand the blast and heat. It's interesting to know that this is the most famous building that they have kept from Hiroshima bombing, just to show what happened that day. After the explosion happened and you got close to the blast radius, you wouldn't really see dead bodies. You would see more bones rather than flesh, because the heat would burn off all the flesh and leave bone. But the ones that would get close to the blast radius, their chance of cancer would rise by the second because of the radioactivity in the air. They didn't know that this is an atomic bomb, and after it produces a lot of radioactive waves in pollution and it could easily kill you, but people would still go close to the blast radius in case anyone is alive and is asking for their help. The only people that survived this blast, their only goal was to get close to the river. Maybe they can breathe a little easier next to the river and of course cool off. After a while, the environment after the bomb had turned into higher than 50 degrees Celsius, which was extremely hot, and there was no drinking water. So a lot of more people wanted to go to a river just to drink water. The ash, smoke, and everything else that was produced by this explosion has gone up towards the clouds, and after 1 hour, rain begins. Not any rain, acid rain. Anywhere this rain would fall, it would create black spots, because the rainwater was literally black, because it's passing through so much smoke, ash, and dust. It seems like burnt oil is falling down. The radiation of the radioactive waves is also doing its job and polluting everything, but people don't realize any of that. They don't know if they are breathing in this environment, their chance of cancer is going up. But let's get close to the river and see what is happening. The people that had gotten themselves towards the rivers was so hot that they didn't even realize. They just dove inside the water to cool off and start drinking it. They were finally able to cool off after an hour of crawling in intense heat. The acid rain is also falling inside the river and it's polluting the river water as well. But the people didn't care that it was black. They would still drink it because that's how thirsty and hot they were. Unfortunately, a lot of people that actually survived the blast died later on because of the radiation and the environment. And a lot of them died under 2 months after the explosion. Even though a lot of them died because of this blast, but there was still a small minority that survived, and they lived till they were old. And these were the people that told us how it happened and what took place. The ones that were close to the explosion evaporated immediately, and most of these stories are given by the people that were far away from the blast. More than 135,000 people died because of the Hiroshima bomb. After this took place, the American government tells the Japanese to surrender, end this war. The Japanese government declined and told the Americans that they had not created such bomb and this was Mother Nature. The Americans realized that they are not going to give up and they planned for the second bomb. 3 days later, a much more powerful bomb hit the city of Nagasaki. Nagasaki is a smaller city and with the lower population, but still 64,000 people died instantly after this bomb. After this explosion, the Japanese government realized what is happening and where these bombs are coming from. And if they don't surrender, the third bomb is on its way. It's interesting to note that the American government actually had planned for a third bomb because they were expecting the Japanese to not surrender again, because in their culture surrendering has no meaning and they will kill themselves for their motherland. After the Nagasaki bomb, the Japanese government surrendered and World War II finally ends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.